Hello guys, this is Doronsmovies, and today I'll be teaching you how to roleplay a Tauren in World of Warcraft. So in this video, we'll go over a few points. Most importantly, I will give you some insight into their lore and how they got where they are. And I will also help you name your character, choose a personality and a class that suits you the best. And I will also tell you a bit about their appearance, their traditions, their lifestyle and all that stuff. So let's not waste any more time and let's actually get into their lore. Now, unlike the other races, Tauren don't really have all that much lore like some others do, even though they're one of the oldest races we know of on Azeroth. And a lot of people say that they're as old as the Night Elves, but now we actually know that the Night Elves are in fact trolls, so trolls are older than the Night Elves. So they are either as old as the trolls, if not even older, and probably one of the first races. And it is said that they actually predate the Titans and that they evolved from this bull ancient. And we barely even know anything about them until the point where Troll meets them in Warcraft 3. And the major part of it is because they didn't really write their history like a lot of other races do. And a lot of it has been forgotten. So usually they tell their stories orally, so you can imagine how something like that happened like 10,000 years ago sounds today after being told through so many generations and different versions and all of that. So they didn't really like capture everything and forgot a lot of stuff. Now in the actual timeline, they didn't really participate in the War of the Ancients that was 10,000 years ago. However, in the actual book, which is an alternative universe, they did participate in it, but that doesn't really matter all that much in the long run because that didn't really happen in the actual world. And they inhabited mostly the middle part of Kalimdor, Barrens, Mulgore and all of those zones around there. However, we don't really know where they were when all of the continents were kinda combined. And they were also a nomadic tribe, meaning that they changed their home quite often for multiple millennia. At the point when they were led by Kian Bloodhoof and they met Droll and everything, all of those events from Warcraft 3, they were actually on the brink of extinction and not many of them were left. They were battling the Centaur and a lot of stuff was going pretty badly for them. But then they joined the Orcs, who had allied themselves with the Dark Spirit Trolls previously on the Broken Isles, and together they actually managed to get rid of the Centaur and form their own first home after who knows how many millennia in Mulgore. Now they welcomed all of the Tauren tribes, as there were a bunch of Tauren tribes. I will cover them later, but not really that much in detail. But there was one tribe that was always against them, and those are the Grim Totem tribe. And since Warcraft 3 until Cataclysm, not all that much really happened with the Tauren. I mean, they were led by Kian Bloodhoof. But since Garrosh took over the Horde just a bit before the start of the Cataclysm, a lot of things went wrong for the Tauren. Now, Kian, seeing Garrosh's evil in advance and upset because of the killing of the Druids at the time, which he thought was Garrosh's work, even though it was actually organized by the Twilight's Hammer clan. And then Kiran challenged Garrosh to a duel to the death, in which of course Kiran had the upper hand, because he was a really seasoned warrior and he was pretty old, so he was an experienced fighter. But little did he know that Magera Grim Totem, leader of the Grim Totem tribe, poisoned Garrosh's Gorehowl axe, and without his knowledge, Garrosh inflicted a small cut onto Cairn, which killed him almost instantly. And it turned out all of this was actually a part of this big plan of the Grim Totem that was actually planned by the Megata. And she already planned a siege on Thunderbluff, the Tauren capital, and it started in the middle of the night while everyone was sleeping. And when the siege commenced, luckily Bane, which is Kieran's son, managed to escape. He went to Terramore, and with the help of the Jaina and the goblins and a lot of other warriors, they took over Thunderbluff back and casted the Grim Totem away. However, they gave a few members a choice to join if they wished to do so, but a lot of them they casted away. Now, not all that much happened for the Tauren except the fact that they were in the rebellion in Mists of Pandaria timeline, and they still continue to inhabit Mulgore with Thunderbluff as their capital. Now, if you'd like to find out more about what actually happened and the entire betrayal thing I just said, you can check out my Shattering book explanation video on the channel, as I explained all of the events of the book in kind of sort of detail. But if you want more detail, I would suggest picking up the book The Shattering, because it is really interesting. Now let's get a bit into their traditions and appearance. So as you may know, obviously the Tauren are really tall and probably the biggest playable race right now, I believe. I know the trolls are a bit taller, but since they're hunched, they're a bit shorter than the Tauren. But I would say the Tauren are the tallest race as it is, as they have a hunch of their own. Now, their average height is around 8 feet, but they can go a lot bigger than that. And their weight is around 400-500 pounds on average, which is mostly muscle. And they also like to wear a lot of jewelry, necklaces, nose rings, and a lot of other like tribal stuff. Now they mostly prefer to wear like this leather cloth, and they can also use heavy metal armor if it fits them well, but they prefer to go with all of the tribal stuff. Now when it comes to aging, they don't really differ too much from the humans and the orcs, or even the trolls, even though around 40 or 50 they're considered to be adult, while it's a bit different with the humans. But a rare case when there is a Tauren over 100 years old, so their usual life expectancy is around 80-90 years old, and that is still considered pretty old. So don't go really crazy and say like your Tauren is like 300 years old or something like that, because some people might think that, because the Night Elves were immortal for a time, and they were around the same time, but yeah, they live pretty much just an average life. Now when it comes to fate, Tauren believe in natural spirits and entities and all of that stuff, and religion is very important in their society. As you may know, they mention the Earth Mother a lot in pretty much almost every sentence, who is the nature itself, and they value Earth Mother the most. They believe that everything has a spirit of its own, and this is why they value pretty much all forms of life, so they don't really think like one form of life like the Tauren are more superior to any other forms of life, and they like to keep a certain balance. So their society is mostly based on shamanism and druidism, which is a huge reason why they're so connected to the orcs and why they made such a really weird connection, as not very often do races from like all different worlds find such a common ground as shamanism. And the druidism aspect is also the reason why they kinda share a common ground with the Night Elves and all that stuff. Now generally when it comes to their lifestyle, they're very peaceful and try to avoid war as much as possible, but don't really let it fool you, as they can be one of the fiercest races around. Even though they have a racial spell called War Stomp that stuns the targets, it is actually said that it works in the lore as well, as a lot of spells don't really work in the lore the same, but since they're very big and very strong, their actual stomp can be pretty effective and can actually like stun targets for a few seconds. So if you couldn't tell, their entire culture takes a lot of aspects from the real world, like Native Americans, such as believing in spirits, living in like these leather tents, worshipping the nature itself, and having all of these totems and all sorts of like tribal stuff, and like just names that are quite similar as well. Now, unlike the other races like the trolls or the dwarves, they don't really have a specific accent when they talk, even though their language is called the Taurachech. It is actually spelled like Taur-Achech, so when talking in common there will be no need to like shorten certain words or go crazy on the apostrophes like you do with the trolls or the dwarves and all that, so just speak in regular English when you type, as they pretty much just talk in common. Alright, let's go a bit into naming your character, as Taurens are a bit more different when it comes to naming compared to other races. Now, they only formally receive their name a few years after their birth, which is a bit different compared to humans, for example, who get their name right after birth, and formally they receive their name by an elder from a tribe on a so-called feast they organize, but they can also acquire like names, like dream names later on in life. They can be called by their name they receive through their actions, or even by nicknames they're called and all that stuff. Now, their names usually have a tribal sounding to it, which is what I said with the Native American thing, so males could be called something like Earthwalker, Stormhoof, Flametongue, while females could be called something like Arata, Raveneye, etc. A few other names like Megara. You can also go for like Celtic and Native American names if you see it fit, as most of their names are kinda tribal. Just don't please use like Horn or Cow or something like that, as no one will really take you seriously if you do that. Alright, before we finally get into the personality and the classes, let's first cover a few tribes they have. Now, I won't really be covering these tribes in detail like I did with the previous races, as they aren't really all that distinct. For example, like the orcs have the Warsong, Frostwolf clan and all of that stuff. So I will only mention a few important ones that you can choose to be from. Obviously, the first one would be the Bloodhoof tribe, and then you have the Rage Totem, Rune Totem, Dawnstrider, Stonehoof, and a bunch of others you can find on the internet, as I can't really fit all of them in this video. and most of them are with the Horde, but as I said, the Grim Tauren tribe is sort of an exception, as they never really wanted to join the Horde, even though, as I said previously in the video, some of their former tribe members were accepted into the Horde, so I believe it is possible to actually RP a Grim Totem, even though they're not really that big in numbers, like at least the ones that joined the Horde. Alright, now let's get a bit into their personality types you can choose, and I will only show you like 3 guideline types, as these will just be like drastic examples, and of course you can always mix them up and make your own character however you want to do so. So, the first type would obviously be the Peaceful Tauren, and this would be the biggest stereotype when it comes to the Tauren, as they're perceived as very calm and wise. If you RP this personality, it is best to go with an older Tauren, as logically he had more life experience, but you can also do it with a younger Tauren. Pain Bloodhoof would be a perfect example of that, as he's very calm-headed and honorable and very peaceful, even though he's a lot younger than Kieran. A Peaceful Tauren respects like all races, even the enemies and all forms of life, so pretty much his name says itself. Alright, second type would actually be the Honorable Warrior Tauren. Now this one is a bit of a mix between the previous one and the next one I'm going to mention, but pretty much Honorable Warrior personality doesn't necessarily mean you have to pick like a warrior class just because I said a warrior, but it means that this type of a Tauren will fight if he feels threatened. He can also be peaceful and forgiving, but if he is aggravated or he and his clan are under a threat, he wouldn't be afraid to put his life on the line, and Kieran would be a perfect example of this, as he was a peaceful and a wise Tauren, but would go to any extent to protect his own people, even if it took his own life. And the last type is the Aggressive Tauren. Now this one is a bit more drastic, as not all Tauren are peaceful and loving, hence is why you see like brutal Tauren warriors and mercenaries and all of that. So if you want to RP a Tauren that isn't like specifically super honorable or peaceful, and is a sort of a mercenary, this personality would be a great choice for you. Now, unlike his other peaceful brethren, he wants to really put his actual strength to use because the Tauren are really strong. So this type of a Tauren wouldn't mind joining any side if you would get something out of it. However, do keep in mind that this type is pretty rare, as Tauren are generally honorable to every race, but every race has their own exceptions. And this would be a pretty fun way to RP a Tauren, and pretty much new, because a lot of people just go with the peaceful type and all of that. Now, as I said, you can always mix these up. I just gave you like drastic sort of personalities, but you should probably mix these up together. These are just some guidelines. And just like in the real world, I mean, everyone is different, so feel free to shape your character personality however you want to do so, as that is pretty much the entire point of role-playing. Alright, and lastly in this video, we will be covering the classes and the subclasses that could be built from the actual in-game playable ones. And I will only cover a few, just like in the other videos, because if I covered all of them, the video would just take forever. But if you want to look for your own class, like specifically, either use the Wowpedia or just Google it, as there are a lot of other excellent sources for this. But I will cover as much as I can in this video without keeping it super long. As with all of the other previous RP guides, we are going to start this one with the warrior class, and Taurens actually make great warriors, but they are much more different than the orcs or the trolls, as I mentioned in the previous guides. They aren't necessarily like bloodthirsty or extremely brutal, however they can be really deadly, and in most cases when it comes to combat, they're very calm, they keep a calm head. And the reason why Tauren kinda make perfect warriors isn't because they're like very agile or super quick or stealthy or anything like that, but it's because they're giant, heavy and muscular, and even though they're kinda slow, they can actually deal blows much stronger than even an orc could, so that is why they would make a perfect warrior. Even as a tank, they can obviously take more blows as well. Now you can go about a warrior in a few ways, but generally an honorable Tauren brave protector would work great, even though you can also be a mercenary and everything I mentioned previously. Alright, next one is the hunter. Now, much like the orcs, the Tauren are natural born hunters, and all of the Taurens learned how to hunt, and all of them are pretty much hunters. But just like the warriors, the Tauren kinda make perfect hunters, like a race-wise, as they have a unique relationship with the nature and all of its animals, and they don't just necessarily slaughter whatever they find, as they try to keep a balance in the nature itself, and they pay great respect towards the beast they kill. As with pets, as I said, they have a good connection with the nature, so a bond between a Tauren and its companion is quite unique. Now you can go about this class in a few ways, however just a straight out hunter would work, even though a lot of other classes are hunters as well, but you can also be a tracker, marksman, or even a scout, even though the Tauren aren't really like agile and stealthy as I mentioned. Now, next on are the shamans and the druids. Now, these are very relatable, even though they're essentially a bit different, and shamanism and druidism is very closely connected with the Tauren lifestyle, and they actually make great shamans and druids because of their connection with the Earth Mother. It is actually said that the Taurens were the first druids on Azeroth, however that hasn't really been confirmed, but we do know that they were taught, but have forgotten the ways of druidism, which they have relearned again not that long ago. Now, if you're a druid, try to use the animal form only when really necessary, as that is what Tauren pretty much do. And these two classes would also work great with a peaceful or even the honorable warrior personality type, and especially well if you're like an older or a wise Tauren, as shamans and druids in general are very wise. And lastly, we're going to cover the newer addition, and that is the priests and the paladins. Now, immediately, you have to know that they aren't really priests or paladins, and rather can even be called seers, and they're pretty much just using the game mechanic of the priests and the paladins when they cast the spells, but they don't really worship the light, but they worship Anshi instead, which is the sun, and that is why they're called the Sunwalkers. So do not RP them as worshipping the light, as that is a giant mistake, or anything like that, as they're more like sun druids instead of just regular priests. So they're pretty much druids in a way. It can be a bit harder to RP them, but make sure to understand everything about the Sunwalkers. I don't think I've made a video before, but you can check it out. There's a bunch of like Wowpedia pages and all that, so please like do some research before RPing this one, but I kinda gave you a brief description, so at least you know to not make that mistake. And that is all I have for this race RP guide. Thanks a lot for watching, and I hope you had enjoyed at least. I hope it helped you out in some manner of setting up your character. Currently, I don't have any races planned next. Before I did, I had the dwarves and the Tauren planned, so feel free to leave your suggestions in the comment section below, and I will decide on what to do next. Most likely I will do something on the Alliance side, as at this current time I covered 3 Horde races and only 1 Alliance race. So I got to kind of balance things out. I don't really want to do just a Horde. Anyways, don't forget to like, favorite and subscribe, as it really does help out the channel a lot, and it keeps all of these videos going, and I couldn't really have done this without your support, so I really do appreciate it. Also, in the next week or so, you can check out my live stream on Twitch. There's a link in the description, as I will be live streaming Worlds of Draenor beta and leveling to 100, usually around 6 or 7 PM GMT. And we actually saw a bunch of like these major lore figures, so if you want to tune in and check that out, you have the links in the description for that below. Anyways, thanks so much for taking your time to watch this video, and see you in the next RP guide.